And the second presentation is also belongs to the bone markers, which is beta cross labs and total P1NP. So let's start with the Meglumi 25 hydroxy vitamin D. So in this presentation, we have 4 parts. The first part contains about the vitamin D introduction, and I will give you the brief introduction about the vitamins. And the second part contains the clinical utilization of 25-hydroxy vitamin D. And the third part contains what are the solution of SNIDE from the Meglumi platform, and how we are good in terms of correlation with the gold standard of LCMS and the other proficiency testing, which given an evidence that how reliable we are. And we will discuss about the market information that the global utilization of this analyte in IVD market. So let's start with the vitamin D introduction. So as you know that vitamins are hello. So as you know that the vitamins are basically vital amine or a group of substances that's need for the normal cell functions and the growth and the development. And it was derived from the word vitamins, means those vital amine which are organic compounds, and they are coined by the 1912 by the biochemist Casimir Funk, while working at the Lister Institute of Preventive Medicines. So you can say that the vitamins are required in very small amount in the body, but it's play a very vital role for the cell functions, normal cell functions, growth, and the development. The second important thing is about that we can classify the vitamins into 2 major groups. The one major group is called water-soluble vitamins, and the other is called fat-soluble vitamins. So the water-soluble vitamins are thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, vitamin B6, folic acid, and vitamin B12. These are water-soluble vitamins. And usually the hypervitaminosis of B12 or water-soluble vitamins is very rare. Usually, if they exceed in the bloodstream more than the normal range or of a normal threshold, they can excrete out from the body. While the fat-soluble vitamins, which are example, the vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin D, and vitamin K. These are fat-soluble vitamins, and these vitamins, hypervitaminosis is equally dangerous as compared to the hypovitaminosis. So let's start with the vitamin D introduction. In this vitamin D introduction, it's basically a group of fat-soluble vitamin, and it is steroid in nature. And there are 2 forms of vitamin D's are biologically relevant. Like one is called ergocalciferol, that's a provitamin, and the other one is called cholecalciferol. So vitamin D is synthesized by the body, and these are the 2 sources. One is the plant source, that's the vitamin D2. The other is the cholesterol conversion into a provitamin of vitamin D3, that's a cholecalciferol. With the help of sunlight, it's converted into a 25 hydroxy vitamin D, and then it's also they are converted into these both, the vitamin D2 and D3, into the 25 hydroxy vitamin D. And this 25 hydroxy vitamin D2 and D3 are further converted into a 25 hydroxy vitamin D. And then this is the active, is converted into the active form of 1-25 dihydroxy. So that's provitamins like cholecalciferol and ergocalciferol through the body mechanism. It's biosynthesis process. It's convert into the 25 hydroxy vitamin D2 and 25 hydroxy vitamin D3, and later they both convert into a 25 hydroxy vitamin D, and then it's converted into a 1-25 hydroxy vitamin D. So if we take about the normal intake of vitamin D. So usually argocalciferol source is the food, like you can see here, the cereals, the milk, the cheese, the fish, and the eggs contains these vitamins, or the food supplements also helps to meet the body requirement. And the main source of the production of vitamin D in the skin is usually through the sunlight. The sunlights, ultraviolet lights, then convert the 7D hydro cholesterol to the cholecalciferol, and then this cholecalciferol, that's the vitamin D3, goes into the livers, and also the dietary intake of vitamin D3 and vitamin D2 goes into the liver and then convert into a 25 hydroxy vitamin D3 or 25 hydroxy vitamin D2. And the total is called 25 hydroxy vitamin D. Which we are detecting and the other competitors in the market are detecting. They are detecting both 25 total vitamin D, 25 hydroxy vitamin D3, and 25 hydroxy vitamin D2. So then this 25 hydroxy vitamin D3 and D2 are converted in the kidney, and then it's converted into the 1-25 dihydroxy vitamin D, which is the main function of between these and these two are that it's maintain the calcium balance in the body. So it maintains the calcium level in the body, and then maintains the bone integrity. That's why these are more important. So as you know about the vitamin D metabolism, if you see that in the vitamin D metabolisms, there is a photoproduction and the metabolism of vitamin D in the various biological effect makes the 1-25 dihydroxy vitamin D2 on the calcium, phosphorus, and bone metabolism. You can see here the skin, and usually there's the one thing I would like to share with you. Those people who are belongs to the darker in their skin color, that's a melanin, they have a more probability of absorbing the sunlight. That's why their vitamin D level is comparatively better than those people or those countries where the sun exposure is less. Or even in Pakistan, there is one interesting thing that in the city where we are living in Karachi, we have a lot of vitamin D deficient population. When one of the leading scientists, they have tried to investigate that situation. There are three major reasons for that vitamin D deficiency in Pakistan population, especially in one of the biggest city in Karachi. So the reason is the apartment life. So the people who are living in close houses, there is a less exposure of sunlight. And the second thing is about the dietary habits. They are using high flame cooked food. That's why they are facing all the vitamins and minerals are destroyed in their cooking style and their in their techniques. So that there is the less source of vitamins from the food. And the third is the genetical factors. So there are close family marriages, and then leads to some genetic mutations, and then this genetics also play a very vital role for the vitamin D deficiency. So if we talk about that, in a skin there is 7D hydrocholesterol then converted into the vitamin D2, and then it's convert vitamin D circulate in the blood, and then via the chylomicrons and then the lymphatic systems, and this process this vitamin D goes to the liver, and then the liver through the biosynthesis process that's converted into a 25 hydroxy vitamin D through the 25 hydroxylase enzyme. So this enzymes then convert that into a 25 hydroxy vitamin D and D2 and D3, and then it's go to the kidney, and then the kidney convert into a 1 hydroxylase enzyme, convert into the 1-25 dihydroxy, and then this 1-25 dihydroxy with the help of enzyme of 25 hydroxylase convert into the calcitonin acids, and then it's excrete out in the urine if after the utilization of help in the deposition of calcium into the bones. And then there's also another pathway through which that's the 1-25 vitamin D2 is formed, and then it's goes to the osteoclast activity and osteoblast activity, and the PTH is also play a very vital role for the bone metabolisms and the deposition of calcium and phosphorus into the bone, and then this helps to retain the bone integrity. So this is the basically a bone metabolism cycle of osteoblast and osteoclast is controlled by these vitamin precursors, including the PTH as well. So vitamin D is either is produced in the skin by the exposure of ultraviolet radiation or in the through the dietary habits, and they represent the vitamin D2 and D3, which is converted into the liver about the 25 hydroxy vitamin D through the enzymes, and then into the liver it's converted into those vitamin D2 and D3 of 25 hydroxy, and then the kidney helps to convert into the 1-25 dihydroxy. So this is the whole mechanism of vitamin D from the natural source of sunlight, conversion of 7-dehydroxycholesterol, or the dietary habits contain, or dietary source contain vitamin D2 and D3. So if we more talk about the vitamin D, so you can see here the vitamin D has a hydroxylation process in the liver and then further hydroxylation process in the kidney. So you know that the vitamin D is hydroxylate in the liver to form a 25 hydroxy vitamin D, while the kidney hydroxylation occurs of a 25 hydroxy vitamin D to form 1-25 hydroxy vitamin D. So if the renal function is impaired or something wrong with this mineral bone metabolisms or biosynthesis, there will be a deficiency of 1-25 hydroxy vitamin D. So in the next step, when the hydroxylation in the liver occurs, the conversion of vitamin D2 or D3 to 25 hydroxy vitamin D2 or D3, if we call them a total, that's in a total. It includes both vitamin D2 and D3. So the vitamin D, total vitamin D25 hydroxy is the best indicators for the evaluating the amount of vitamin D, while the 1-25 hydroxy dihydroxy vitamin D is an hormone which promote the bone mineralization and maintain the calcium and the phosphorus level of homeostasis, and as well as the influence of the functions of the tissue. So it's a very interesting. If this vitamin D level is low and this is slightly low, but the serum calcium levels maintains okay in the blood of usually osteopenia and osteoporosis cases. So what is that? The human immune systems always maintain the calcium level. So if through this mineral metabolism, the vitamins metabolisms, through this process, the serum level of calcium not maintained. So the bones release their calcium to maintain the serum levels. So that's why the 24-hydroxy vitamin D is the form that is measured to assess the vitamin D sufficiency or deficiency, and that's total vitamin D includes both 25-hydroxy vitamin D2 and vitamin D3. If we talk about the biological effect of vitamin D, that's 24-hydroxy vitamin D have a major circulation metabolites, like in the kidney and in the functions of pancreas and during the pregnancy, the placenta. and the lungs colon is skin and the prostate and the breast, as well as for the macrophages for the immune systems. So all this 1-25 hydroxy vitamin D has an further, like for the kidney, they have an impact calcium homeostasis, the balance in the serum level, and it helps to aid the blood pressure regulation, and promotes the bone formation and also improve the cardiovascular health. Along with that, there is a neurodevelopment aid is also provided by that 25 hydroxy vitamin D or 1-25 hydroxy. If we talk about the role of vitamin D in pancreas, it's an insulin secretion facilities are propagate through this the support of that vitamin. Along with that, for the placenta, they have influenced the fetal development and the placental development, along with the placental calcium transfer for the fetal bone mineral accrual and the development during the pregnancy. So about the lungs, colon, skin, prostate, and the from the breast, they regulate the cell cycle. Also, they inhibit the cell proliferation, so that the apoptosis, regulation, angiogenesis inhibitions, and for the immune system, macrophage, the defense system, they have immunodulations, enhance innate immunity, and also regulate the autoimmune response. So these are the different organs and the different scenarios in which the vitamin D play a very vital role as an their biosynthesis process and the other process. So let's talk about the clinical application of 25 hydroxy vitamin D. So this is the clinical application of 25 hydroxy vitamin D. If I'm moving fast, please let me know. So because it's a very common and interesting subject, so usually we just give you the review and then we move forward. If I'm moving very fast, please let me know so I can slow my pace. Okay, please share with me that if you have any concern. Okay, so let's talk about the clinical utilization of 25 hydroxy vitamin D. It's basically maintain the calcium and phosphorus homeostasis. How? The vitamin D circulate as a prohormone in the blood, and this vitamin D has a direct renal effect on the tubular reabsorption of phosphorus and the calcium, which regulates the concentration of calcium and phosphorus in the bloodstream, and how it's promote the bone mineralization. So the vitamin D can strengthen the bone in the combination with the calcitonin and the parathyroid hormone, which reduce the risk of osteoporosis in the elderly people. So this is basically the two major functions in terms of biosynthesis, in the terms of physiology in a human body, how the vitamin D play a vital role for the homeostasis of calcium and phosphorus and the mineralization of the bone in combination with the calcitonin and the PTH. So if we talk about how the vitamin D contribute in a mineralization of the bones and the other process. So you can see here the vitamin D major function in the body through both on endocrine mechanism, basically the regulation of the calcium absorption through the tubular network of the kidneys, and then an autocrine mechanism like the facilitation of gene expressions. So here you can see that the serum calcium levels in the bloodstream comes from either through the kidney or through the bones. So if the PTH is there, then it's PTH act on the kidney, and then it's released that 25 hydroxy vitamin D, convert the 25 hydroxy vitamin D to 1-25 hydroxy vitamin D, and then it's go to the intestine and then absorb the calcium and send it back to the maintain the serum levels. So if the PTH is released from the parathyroid gland, thyroid glands, pancreas, and then it goes to the bones, and then bones release the calcium to maintain the serum calcium levels. So this calcium goes to trigger the parathyroid to release in the bloodstream, and this is the whole mechanism of the regulatory mechanism of the vitamin D. So if we talk about the disorder produce or the issue, the complications occur during the low vitamin D status, it's the strong evidence that due to the vitamin D deficiency, the osteoporosis chance is very high, and the falls in the geriatric patient, the probability of falls is more frequent fall during their walk, and with the cancers, they are more prone to the cancers if they have the vitamin D deficiency. With that, they have a periodontal diseases, dental problem. They have a susceptible poor response to the infection, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 size. And then if we have the lower evidence of the disorders like type 1 diabetes and this is important, including the combination of type 1 diabetes, hypertension, and vitamin D deficiency may lead to the more complication and different cardiovascular disease along with the renal dysfunction and the other complication as well. So if you talk about the autoimmune disease, the probability is also more as compared to the multiple sclerosis. So it gives a strong evidence in mostly disorders, and in the few disorder, they have a less or a randomized trials evidence for that. So this is about the contribution of vitamin D in these disorders. So let's go to the next slide. In the next slide, we have a different chart for the vitamin D deficiency. So as you know that this is a fat-soluble vitamin D, so it's a deficiency and the intoxication, which is both are equally dangerous. So keeping a balance between the normal and the deficient and the intoxication is very much important. So the vitamin D, if you talk about the vitamin D, you can see here the vitamin D deficiency treatments. It includes that the deficiency of vitamin D status is considered as an less than 12 or less than 20, and the insufficient D is essentially between 12 to 19, and then the sufficiency between 20 to 29, and the high sufficiency is between greater than 50. So it's considered as if that's it's between 30 to 49 is considered as a sufficient. But according to the Endocrine Society, the deficient, which is the deficient and insufficient, further narrow classification of vitamin D deficiency, which helps to treat the patient on the basis of insufficiency and deficiency, the vitamin D ampule intakes and the duration of that patient is depends on. And then they have to maintain around 600 to 2,000 international unit per day for the vitamin D, and that early treatment is to provide a 50,000 or maybe in some cases the 1 lakh international unit per week for the 6 to 8 weeks, up to the 6 to 8 weeks. But for the sufficiency in the high, that's then greater than 400 IU per day may goes to the high status of that patient. So basically, the treatment of these vitamin D2 and D3 and the daily recommended dosage are defined here. So it's recommended that for that. So if we go for a further clinical utilization of vitamin D, so you can see here the vitamin D and the bone marker deficiencies may risk to the bone health, and then it's maybe in the pediatrics they have a rickets disease, and in the osteomyelitis is also called that's the rickets. It's a disease characteristics by the softening of the bones, and which caused by the impaired bone metabolism. Usually that's due to the inadequate level of phosphorus, calcium, and vitamin D. So if such situation occurs like osteomalacia or a ricket condition, that's in this condition, the patient phosphorus, serum phosphorus, calcium, and vitamin D play a vital role for the diagnosis of impaired bone metabolism. So if you talk about the osteomalacia or the rickets in the children is also known as the rickets. And this is use of terms of osteomalacia be restricted to the milder type, adult form of the disease. And it's vitamin D, 25 hydroxy could be used to screen the vitamin D deficiency in the population. If you further go about for the rickets in details, what is rickets? So you can see that it's also known as osteomalacia because it's this rickets occurs in the usually in the children, and this disease is characterized by the softening of the bone, and it is caused by due to the bone metabolism's inadequate bone mineralization. And the most common cause of osteomalacia, along with the calcium and phosphorus deficiency, is a vitamin D deficiency. So, what are the symptoms of rickets in the peds? Like the board lag, stunted growth, bone pairs, and the large foreheads, and the trouble sleeping. And they may have a many complications, including the bone fractures and the muscle spasm and abnormally the curved spine and intellectual disabilities also occurs. So, in my opinion, the rickets disease occurs at the pediatric age, and the early sign is the legs bone. If the legs bones are bow shape or curved, so it's an early marker of mineral bone mineralization inadequate and osteomalacia condition. So you can see here what happened in that. That's high acidosis. The rickets condition may have some then hypophosphatemia, and then this due to the excessive phosphate loss, RDA cases, H plus ion retains. In due to the acidosis cases, dissolutions of the bones occurs, and it may leads to the rickets. And through the calcium carbonate release, acids are buffers and against the acidosis, and then calcium excretion in the urine occurs. So the rickets may lead to that. And if the 25 hydroxy vitamin D through the acidosis process convert into the 1-25 dihydroxy, then it's decrease the value of active vitamin D, and the body calcium levels decrease, and then may also goes to the rickets. Along with that, these are the different four pathway through which that's the disease of rickets occurs in the pediatric patients. So if we talk about more about osteoporosis, so usually in adult, either the women which are more prone to the osteoporosis due to the menopausal stage, and after the menopausal, the hormonal imbalance may lead to the osteoporosis. So it's in generally it's in now these days for the bone health, for the geriatric women especially, the screening of their bones are now the part of their preventive medicines in the world right now, and the personalized health care. And if we talk about the osteoporosis, usually osteoporosis and the osteopenia, which is the stage 1 of the bone disease, is usually occurs in males as well. But usually, if the osteopenia is untreated, it may lead to the osteoporosis. And women usually they are prone to the osteopenia for the shorter period, and they are more prone to the osteoporosis. So here you can see that about the definition. It's basically a systematic skeletal disorder which is characterized by the low bone mass, bone index, and then microarchitectural deterioration of the bone tissue that's leading to the bone fragilities. And basically, it's increased the fracture of the risk if the patient has the symptoms of osteoporosis. What are the characteristics? About 15% of Caucasians in the 50% and there have an over 80% are impacted. It's more common in women as compared to the men. So this is basically according to the hands out on the health of the osteoporosis, NIAMS August 2014 data, and there are some the clinical epidemiology of osteoporosis, a review of the recent literature from the clinical epidemiology journals, and the archives of osteoporosis. So if we talk about epidemiology, this aging population demographic will likely have a significant impact on the number of hip fractures. So how we can correlate that's osteoporosis, that's usually the most fragile bone is the hip bone in the geriatric patient. So if they have a loss of hip bone during their walk, and then they are conservative estimated, that's an increases from 1.66 million in 1919 to 6.26 million by the 2050. So if the geriatric population the quality of life is improved, but if they have to be more focused on the screening testing for the osteoporosis, and due to the increase in the geriatric population overall, due to the health quality improved globally, now the risk of this osteoporosis is increased. So if we talk about the vitamin D insufficiency in Parkinson's disease. So as you know that the Parkinson's disease is the movement disorder. Is a movement disorder which is characterized by the tremors, the rigidity, and the slowness of the movement and postural imbalance. So the probability of the forward tilt of the trunk, the reduced arm swings, and then this shuffling giant with the short steps, and the rigidity and trembling of the extremities, and the rigidity and trembling of the head. So this Parkinson's disease is basically a tremors disease, and it occurs at the old age. And there is an evidence of abnormalities in the vitamin D endocrine system in the Parkinson's disease patients has been reported. So according to that data, that the low bone mineral density, that's in a bone BMD, and the decreased vitamin D levels and the increased bone turnovers that may lead to the Parkinson's disease. So that's why we in the old age, the screening of their bone metabolism is more significant, and the treatment of osteopenia and osteoporosis, including the rickets, is more important. So if we talk about the vitamin D insufficiency in the Parkinson's disease, so there is an prevalence of vitamin D insufficiency, and the insufficiency is considered at less than 30 nanogram per ml. So if we talk about the different seasons, because the vitamin D values are based on the seasons, because in some countries have more than one seasons, like summer and the winter, including the autumn and then spring. So during these winter season, there is a less exposure, and the vitamin D's are also levels are also impacted in winter season as compared to the summer season. So you can see here that in the winter seasons from January, December, and January to June, that's in a winter spring season, and the summer fall from July to December, there is a slightly change in the value of the Parkinson disease and the Alzheimer disease, and then there have the vitamin D levels. You can see here they have a 55, 56, and 54 values with the Parkinson disease, and with the patient with the Alzheimer disease, the value of vitamin D is 41, 38, and 44 on the basis of their seasons. So in journal, if we talk about, you can see here the patient who have a normal values, they have a number of 36, 40, and 31 during that different all seasons, and which includes the summer and the winter season. So the overall conclusion for this study of vitamin D insufficiency in Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease is the prevalence of vitamin D insufficiency is coherent with the significantly higher than the other control groups. So the assay utilization is not only for the rickets, for the osteoporosis or the osteopenia. It's also have a very clinical significance utilization in the Parkinson disease and the Alzheimer's disease. So more than half of the Parkinson disease participant, 55% has the vitamin D insufficiency. So this is very much important clue from these publications. Excuse me, sorry. So if you talk about the vitamin D role in the chronic kidney disease, as you know that in CKD, especially the kidney-related issues, the studies has shown that the vitamin D concentration at stage 4 and 5 patient is at a significantly lower than the kidney disease patient of at stage 3. So you can see here the value of vitamin D has play a very vital role as compared to the stage 3 of the chronic kidney disease. And also that studies has shown that when the concentration of that vitamin D increases by 10 nanogram per ml, the mortality rate of chronic kidney disease significantly decreased by about 14%. So this is a very good sign when if with the renal dysfunction or a CKD situation, the vitamin D supplementation helps them to reduce the mortality rate up to the by 14% in such patients. So if we talk about the clinical application of 25-hydroxy vitamin D, so vitamin D 25-hydroxy monitoring of the vitamin D concentration in the serums according to the recommendation. They have suggested that the measuring of serum vitamin D concentration in children with chronic kidney disease 2 to 5, that's in 6 to 12 months, depending on that. And the conclusion, they have classified the vitamin D status as follow. So what is the sufficiency? It's greater than 30 is considered as a sufficiency, then insufficiency between 20 to 30, the deficiency between 5 to 20, and severe deficiency is less than 5. So these are the guidelines, and not only the deficiency is more clinical significant, as we discussed, due to the fat-soluble vitamin that cannot be excreted out through the urine or through the body sweat. From the body, this vitamin D toxicity is also dangerous. So it is also suggested that the vitamin D supplementation should be stopped when the 120 nanomoles or 48 nanogram per ml is exceeding than 48 nanogram per ml, because it's coming back to the normal range. It takes time. Then the symptomatic toxicity from the vitamin D is defined as about 250 nanomoles by hyperkalemia, hypercalciuria, and you suppress PTH. So the basic function of that vitamin D in chronic disease correlation is the clinical monitoring. It is recommended that for the chronic kidney disease patient, they should be tested 25-hydroxy vitamin D routinely, which has to improve their mortality rate. In the pediatric patient, should be continuous monitoring and the supplemental. And what should be the goal for such patient? It is recommended to maintain your vitamin D levels greater than 30 nanogram per ml, right? So that should be the goal for every person when they are checking their vitamins levels. So along with that, the vitamin D intoxication is also dangerous. Even for the pediatric patient, when they have a vitamin D concentration above 48 nanogram per ml, they need to stop immediately the vitamin D intake, and then they go for that. But for the adult, the vitamin D intoxication values is slightly changed. So according to the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and the Metabolisms, you can see here there are some guidelines for the management of asymptomatic primary hyperparathyroidism. And according to this 25 hydroxy vitamin D should be measured in subject with the primary hyperparathyroidism. And this is an evidence that disease is more active when subjects are vitamin D insufficiency. So the vitamin D deficiency in the primary hyperparathyroidism may lead to some more complication or the different complicated situations. That's why they are recommending the monitoring of vitamin D along with the PHPT. And they have in studies which has been reported that the vitamin 25 hydroxy vitamin D should be measured in all subjects with the primary hyperparathyroidism. And there is an evidence that the disease is more active when the subject of vitamin D is insufficient or frankly the deficient. If less than 20 or less than 10 with the PHPT may lead to more complications. So it's also play a very important role in the thyroid disease. So if we talk about more, the clinical utilization of SNI meglumi 25 hydroxy vitamin D is the risk of cardiovascular disease. So you can see here the vitamin D risk of cardiovascular disease according to the 2015 WHO has been estimated that the cardiovascular disease accounted to be 17.7 million deaths, which represent the 31% of the global deaths. So this is a big challenge. The cardiovascular disease, the number one cause of natural death globally, and the other is the atherosclerosis. This is basically a chronic inflammation condition in which a cell type, cytokines, and adhesive molecule is the underlying cause of the cardiovascular disease. And with regard to the cardiovascular disease, this vitamin D deficiency has been associated with the activation of pro-inflammatory mechanism and then promoting atherogenesis, which leads to the atherosclerosis, and then the blockage of these arteries may lead to the myocardial infarction or other coronary cardiovascular diseases. So this is a big challenge for that when the vitamin D deficiency occurs, you can see that the mechanism, how it's indirect effect and the direct effect. If the vitamin D deficiency occurs, then the hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and the hyperlipidemia, insulin resistance, PTH, may have an indirect impact to create a cardiovascular system. So if the vitamin D deficiency occurs, there are cardiac contractions and then cell proliferation, along with the atherosclerosis and the calcification and the angiotensin systems ratio disturbs, which may directly have an impact on the cardiovascular health system, and then may lead to some myocardial infarction and then cardiovascular diseases. So if we compare the participation with the hypertension and the without hypertension, there is a probability of cardiovascular diseases among that in different years. The conclusion for that that study or a Kaplan-Meier curve showing that the probability of first cardiovascular event in the participation with A that's contained with hypertension and the group B without hypertension, they have a higher risk of associated with the vitamin D deficiency and was a particularly evidence among the individual with the hypertension in whom 25 hydroxyvitamin D level is less than 15. You can see that the risk of cumulative probability risk of cardiovascular disease is more in hypertensive as compared to the without hypertensive, which is a very comparatively low risk. So the 2x fold risk of cardiovascular event is more when they have vitamin D levels less than 15 nanogram per ml. So the vitamin D and type 2 diabetes. So the type 2 diabetes, as you know that, they are the deadly combinations when the women who have the highest calcium and the vitamin D intake, they have a 33% low risk of type 2 diabetes and diabetes mellitus compared with the woman with the low calcium and vitamin D intakes. So you can see here the vitamin D intakes and the calcium intake on the risk of incidence of the type 2 diabetes is low, 33% low as compared to those who have not taking the vitamin D if their daily intake, if they have a deficiency in that. So if we talk about more the role of vitamins in autoimmune thyroid disease, there's a percentage of vitamin D deficiency according to this data of healthy donors and the all patient, and the autoimmune thyroid disease, including HT and GD, they have a Graves' disease and Hashimoto thyroiditis. These are the autoimmune disease of thyroid. In this disease, you can see that the vitamin D deficiency diagnosed in the 63% of the patient with the thyroid disease. Thyroid disease, the prevalence of vitamin D deficiency with the higher concentration patient with the 72%, they have a Hashimoto disease, and 79% in the Graves' disease. So you can see here the prevalence of due to the vitamin D deficiency, the patient would have a particularly these autoimmune disease worse complications are more as compared to if they maintain the vitamin D levels in their blood levels. So if we talk about the vitamin D and the COVID-19, which was a worst pandemic of the world, you can see that they have found that the vitamin D deficiency also helps to treat the patient if they are not deficient, but if their deficiencies occurs, their respiratory immune function is compromised, and due to which there is increased risk of COVID-19 severity and the mortality is increased. So according to the SARS-CoV-2 nucleic acid testing based positivity rate and the vitamin D levels in the total population show that they have inversely the directly correlation. If the vitamin D is deficient, there is a high risk of respiratory immune function, and then as compared to those who have adopted the average level of normal vitamin D levels concentration in the endemic populations. So if we talk about how does the vitamin D affect the COVID-19, so you can see here the vitamin D basically regulate the immunity. Then also play a very vital role for the inflammation by inhibiting the pro-inflammatory cytokines, and which release the macrophages. In the beginning, we have learned that they play a very vital role for the support of macrophages, and it's also upregulating the expressions of the antimicrobial peptide exhibitory antiviral activity. So you can see here they have activated the CD4 T cells. Then they have to release the TH1, TH2, and TH17, and along with that, they have a vitamin D and immune regulations, maintain basically the antibacterial, antiviral, and anti-inflammatory markers for that. So these are play very vital role even in the COVID situation. And then if we talk about what is the solution which is provided by the SNIBE from the Meglumi platform. So we have a Meglumi 25 hydroxy vitamin D assay. So if we compare the vitamin D assay with the other competitors, we have so many competitors in the market like Beckman, Siemens, Abbott, Diasorin, and the Roche. So if we talk about the principles, that usually they have a competitive method, but the SNIBE has developed a sandwich method. So the first results which comes from the Abbott is 38 minutes, or you can say at 39 minutes. It's a pre-treatment assay. So if we talk about the Diasorin, they gives you the result in 35 minutes. The Roche gives you the results in 27 minutes. But this has one challenge as compared to the SNIBE. We have an edge in the reagent terms. I will discuss with you the later. But in this, the results time, the incubation time is equally good as compared to the Roche. So we have a low sample volume, minimal sample volume, or the aspirating volume is just a 10 microliter, or you have to put 100 microliter dead volume. So 110 microliter is enough sample volume for the performing of the vitamin D test. We have a both recommendation serum and plasma type, and we have a precision study of which shows the less than 6.83%, which is better than the other competitors in the market about that. So this is basically a within run precision. So this is about the within run precision of less than 6.83. So if we talk about the limit of blank, limit of detection, and limit of quantitation, we have a much better than lower detection value, and then the limit of quantitation value. So between 1.5 to 150 nanogram per ml is our linearity, which is higher than amongst all the competitors. The second drawback for the other competitors is or the SNIBE edge in this vitamin D assay, that we have only one reagent cartridge when we have to load on a reagent area. So there is only one space is required for the vitamin D assay, while the other competitors like Roche, like Abbott, they required two spaces on the reagent carousels. So if the customer is using Cobas E411, they have a 18 position, one position for the universal diluent, and 17 positions. Out of 17 positions, they required two position for the loading of vitamin D reagent, because the Roche vitamin D reagent contains two cartridges. One cartridge contains R1, R2, and microparticle, and the second cartridge contains pre-treatment 1 and the pre-treatment 2. That's why the two reagent positions are required for that. But the SNIBE has an edge that we have only one position is required to load the vitamin D reagent, and then you can unload these reagent whenever the testing completed for that assay. So, and the other second big edge is the free of cost calibrators and control. Usually, these companies charge high price, high IUP for the calibrators and the control of these parameters. And the second thing is the repeat cost. The second thing about the repeat cost, our assay linearity is up to 150, but for the Roche, they need to give the exact value to avoid or for the patient monitoring if he is on a intoxication level of vitamin D. While the diazorin is equally good, but the lower linearity is not as good as the SNIB has. If you talk about the Abbott, they have an equally good value, but their assay calibrator control cost is much, much higher as compared to the SNIB, which we are delivering free of cost. So just give me a 1 minute. So I have to take. Okay. If you have any question, you can ask. Okay, so let's start with the interpretation of the results. So as you know that in vitamin D, there's an expected range which is based on 576 apparently healthy individual during April to the October month, and the November to the March in China has been evaluated. And this value is based on the different duration and the altogether duration. And there is a 97.5 percentile value is 6.8 to 53.9 or 6.0 to 46.1 nanogram per ml. But if we altogether calculate on all seasons value, this is a 6.5 to 50.3. So the vitamin D levels maybe vary according to the factors of the geographically, the seasons, the diet, and the ethnic origin. Like these normal ranges are not applicable to the African region, where the people have more sun exposures as compared to the Nordic countries like Norway, Sweden, where this sun exposure, or the maybe in the Russia, their sun exposure is low, or maybe in the winter seasons, they're to the less exposed to the sunlight. These values are not recommended. So ideally, it is okay. So you have some questions. Let me see. You've just shown the coefficient of variation. Okay. Can you go back to the slide with the count? Right, sure. Thank you. Yes, this is the precision. So what is your question? Okay, that's great. So what was the result of this research? What you have done? Did you compare the results, or did you compare according to the CLSI guideline for the precision of simple precision or the complex precision? So you did? I do you have any feedback? Okay, sure, sure. Okay, so the difference was 20%. In what terms? In terms of precision or in terms of correlation? Okay, so what is SYNB? What is SYSNYB? Is it a company or it's a brand or it's which country is this brand? So I just see the name of SNB first time. Okay, in terms of accuracy, so okay, so what was the problem? It's the problem was related to the precision or problem was related to the accuracy? Okay, Sachi, thank you. Yes, you are right. The SNIPE prob alignment. That's why my the next question, if you tell me that the issue was related to the precision, so I will go to the prob alignment because and I will ask about the instrument name. If you said that instrument was M800, then I was said that should be the alignment of the prob, right? So maybe some disturb. So this is very much important. So if the accuracy was compromised, then you need to review the calibration curve. So you may recalibrate the assay. You may require to change the reagent, or you have to check the QC trend of SNIPE vitamin D versus the Abbott vitamin D. So this is I will tell you in the next slide, very informative about the SNIPE vitamin D. As you know that the SNIPE vitamin D is uh, FDA approved, first thing. The second thing, we have a broad measuring range. The third thing about the assay is we have a very good participation in DCAS and the proficiency testings. So we are also planning for the vitamin D assay participation in DCAS, increased DCAS, and in the CAP as well. So the assay performance is excellent, only that may be issue with the customer specific, like maybe there is some issue in the instrument. We need an expert engineer to resolve, or an application specialist to resolve that issue. So in my opinion, if you have a problem with the precision, there is an atypical instrument problem, you need to focus on the instrument prop pipetting system, the washer, and the chambers. And the second thing is about the accuracy. If the results accuracy is compromised, you need to first check the QC trend of vitamin D on the SNIPE analyzers. The second thing, you have to use the correlation factor, that when you have run the Abbott samples on that to that, right? So the data was provided from the private clinic at a conference in St. Petersburg. SNIPE employees have data on this case. Okay. So this customer is now having using this SNIPE vitamin D or any other competitor vitamin D. Okay. Mhm. Okay. They refuse, as far as I know, the coefficient of variation above 20. So that's definitely related to the instrument. So, okay. So, is this a big customer? Okay. Okay, Yudin. I will share with you my number. So we will discuss offline, because I can help you to regain that customer. If this customer, Yurin, this customer is a big customer, or it's a challenge for you, you want to acquire that customer, we can discuss later. Okay. Right. So this is my number. So you can come to me, or you can drop a message. We can talk later on a WhatsApp. Maybe we can plan to regain that customer, and I can help you. Okay, we can do that. Right? Okay, that's great. Thank you. So if you go to the interpretation, For that, according to the data of 576 apparently healthy individual between the April to October and November to March, and the overall total normal value is between 6.5 to 50.3. So on the basis of that, the vitamin D also has an other factors like geography, seasons, diet, or the ethnic origin. So they have classified the vitamin D status into 4 different types, like deficiency, insufficiency, sufficiency, and the toxicity. So, if the value is less than 10 nanogram per ml of 25 hydroxy vitamin D, it's considered as deficiency. If it's between 10 to 29, it's considered as insufficiency. Uh, Between 30 to 100, it's considered as sufficiency, and more than 100, it's considered as intoxication and the hypervitaminosis of vitamin D. Okay. Okay, Yurin, thank you. Thank you, Irina. So this is 4 different status of the vitamin D on the basis of their levels in terms of nanogram per ml, right? So if we goes to the comparison of the SNI Maglumi 25 hydroxy vitamin D with other commercially available vitamin Ds, that we have on the basis of 106 samples, we have an excellent correlation between from zero value near to the zero value to up to the 160 values, and the overall correlation is 0.93. So in your case, where we have 20% is very high, right? So the probability may be maximum on the basis of this comparison of Maglumi 25 hydroxy vitamin D versus other commercially available competitors in the market on using the clinical samples. They may be not more than 7%, right? So the 7% coefficient of variation or the variation with the reference instrument is acceptable. But your case was a typical case in which the values were high. But this is the data. According to that, we have an excellent correlation, which is slightly lower results as compared to the reference instrument. So if we go further about the correlation of SNIB Maglumi 25 hydroxy vitamin D with gold standard of LCMS. So you know that still as of today, the vitamins detection through the LCMS is still a gold standard. So we have a good correlation with the LCMS on the basis of 115 samples as compared to the other commercially available. So in that case, with the other commercial assays available, we have a 7%, and with this case, we have a just 3% variation is acceptable. So on the basis of that, we are more close to the LCMS, which is the gold standard for the detection of 25 hydroxy vitamin D. So if we talk about the generation of the Maglumi 25 hydroxy, there's a one more important question. You have to check which generation you have used. Maybe you have not used the second generation of vitamin D. So the second generation is the improved generation as compared to the first generation. So you have also checked that that during the validation of vitamin D at that customer side, you use a second generation vitamin D or the first generation vitamin D. So if we talk about the vitamin D's, second generation from the Maglumi platforms, we are using a new technology that's called a small molecule sandwich technique, which helps to detect the vitamin D directly. This second generation, what are they have procedures or the steps in which they detect. In the first step, that 25 hydroxy vitamin D is bind with the binding protein, and then it's react with the buffer, which contains the displacing reagent, and then plus the microparticle magnetic bead coated with the 25 hydroxy antibodies. So when these antibodies, after treating with the vitamin D and removing these binding protein, it's combined with during this incubation, it's combined with this magnetic microparticle beads and form the immune complex. And after having this immune complex, due to the paramagnetically charged particles in the cuvette, the magnet hold this immune complex, and the unwanted material wash out. And after an unwanted material wash out, then it's dispensed with the ABI label another 25 hydroxy antibodies. So the one antibodies from the patient's serum, and the second antibodies with the ABI label bind with this immune complex on the incubation at 37 degrees centigrade and form the sandwich complex. So this sandwich complex after the incubation goes for the second washing to remove the unwanted ABI label and the unwanted immune complex. And then after washing, it goes to the starter 1+2, and then the emission of occurs, and then the small molecule detect technology using we have the privilege to detect the vitamin D through this sandwich technique. So this is the whole process of detection of vitamin D from the human serum and plasma. So if you go to the second highlight, we have a good result consistency. So if we check with here on the basis of consistency, we have a 0.962% consistency with the reference measurement of the LCMS. You can see here that's a Meglumi 25 hydroxy vitamin D assay. And if we go for the further, you can see here we have good DCAS results performance in the proficiency testing. So according to the proficiency testing, vitamin D external quality assurance systems, we have a very good 0.9882% correlation in the vitamin D external quality assessment program. You can see that according to the bland Altman plot, which is a highly consistent with the DCAS values in the interlaboratory quality assessments samples assessed by the mass spectroscopy, and each sample has a bias within the 10%, and with the mean bias of 0.22%. So you can see here is still the probability of less than 10 or 10% bias is acceptable in the vitamin D, but if you have a 20% bias, which need to be addressed, that's an instrument or the reagent specific issue, but we have a more good high quality results performance in terms of proficiency testing as well. So if you talk about more, we have a standardization against the NIST standard reference material. So this is also one of the greatest evidence that our assay accuracy is better than the other competitors who do not have a standardization process. According to that, we have run different values of level 1, level 2, and level 3, and level 4, which contains the 25 hydroxy vitamin D, and then 24 the other parameters of that. And then you can see that these levels have a target value of 29.3 and 18.9, 33.0, and 30.0. And when we standardize against this NIST standard reference material 2972-A, our results are equally good as compared to the other companies who have a standardization against that. So this is another evidence that's helped us to prove that our assay is standardized. Our assay proficiency testing correlation value is good. We have an commercially available LCMS assay correlation is around 0.96 or 0.97%. with the commercially available automatic vitamin D assays comparison. The SNIDE Meglumi vitamin D has an correlation of 0.93, regression value of 0.93, which also shows a good relation as compared to the other competitors. So let me talk about the detection sensitivity among the mainstreams. So you can see that we have a limit of blank, limit of detection, limit of quantitation, which is much, much better than as compared to the other competitors. You can see here the other ABSA competitors. We are much, much better linearity and the limit of quantitation and the limit of detection as well as compared to the other competitors. So if we talk about the sample volume size, we have a very small sample volume with that decreased sample consumption. This is an edge for the pediatrics, Parkinson's disease, or the geriatric patient and the pediatric and neonatal patient to rule out the rickets, because the sample collection and the sample volume is a big challenge for geriatric and the pediatric and neonatal samples as well. So if we talk about the test shortened turnaround time, we have a turnaround time of just 30 minutes, while the other competitors, except the Roche, they have a bigger time for the assays of given the providing the results of vitamin D. So if we correlate across the board of our instrument performance, like X8 versus 2000p, 4000p, and 4000p versus 2000p, we have an regression value of 0.99, 0.99, and 0.99, which shows the excellent correlation between our X series and the M series. So you have also considered that which instrument that you have used for the comparative study with the Abbott vitamin D. So this is also an important. So if we talk about the agreement between the different tubes recommendation and the compatibility, and according to this Belgium expert of the bone metabolism during his lecture, that's Etienne Cavalier, showing that the good correlation results, evaluation results in the IFCC meetings, that if they use the different values, they use the same samples with the different tubes, they have excellent correlation with the results. Like if they are using a serum, or for the plasma, they have selected the lithium heparin plasma and the dipotassium EDTA plasma, that the purple top and the green top tubes, along with the serum tubes, they have shows the excellent correlation between them. So different tubes for the samples, it's also recommended, so they can be used on the basis of this validation report. So if we move towards the market information, the vitamin D big source in the body is 80 to 90% is from the sunlight, while only 10 to 20% was from the food. Like for the food, like the food supplement, the cod fish liver oils are also a big source of vitamin D and vitamin E in dietary habits, like cheese, eggs, some salmon, fish are having a rich source of vitamin D. So if you go for the human through the continuous innovation, that the vitamin D deficiency population is among the world, around the world, is more than 60%. So this is the drastic and the big news from the world, that the people in the globally, they have a deficiency is observed in the global public health problem. So along with the other public health issues, the vitamin D deficiency also as an emerging disease or emerging condition which goes towards the osteopenia, osteoporosis, and further complication, which leads to some other diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and in the chronic kidney diseases. That's a big challenge. So you can see here the world which shows in the red in colors are more prone to having a more vitamin D deficiency ratios. You can see here in the general population, in the pregnant women, if they are blue in colors, they have a 78% in the pregnant woman. In the general population, 100% is about 99% population. So you can see here the world which is more like the Russia, the China, the India, even with the European countries or Nordics countries are more prone to the vitamin D deficiency. And globally, it's not on the continent wise, it's also a big challenge for the globally having a more vitamin D deficiency. Even those countries who have sun exposure is highest, but still they have a problem of vitamin D deficiency. So if we talk about the market share and the future development in the vitamin D supplements, according to the resource, the vitamin D market size values is around 1.15 million in 2021, and the vitamin D can be grow by 7.8% by 2022 to 2029. It may goes to the 2.26 billion US dollar. So if we talk about the North America, which is led by the US global vitamin D market size, shows steady growth during the forecast period. So you can see that from 1.15 to 2.26, that's a CGR growth of 7.81%. So after having the impact of COVID-19 analysis, the global vitamin D market, the key players are these SaaS companies who are providing maximum research and then the information about the different types of that. The regional analysis, according to that, the North American, European, Asia Pacific regions, they have a different vitamin D2 supplement and vitamin D3 supplementations are there. So as you know that this vitamin is a fat soluble vitamin. So without prescription, like vitamin B intakes, usually for the skin and the nails and the beauty, and for the sclerosis treatment, the vitamin B12 self-medication is common, but for the vitamin D, self-medication is not recommended because this is a fat-soluble vitamin and it may lead to the complication. So the vitamin D assay performance is mandatory, or without the physician prescription is not recommended to intake or supplement vitamin D2 or vitamin D3. So due to this vitamin D fat-soluble nature, the overall vitamin D assay utilization is steadily growing day by day. And for the market trend is also shows that CAGR is 9.3 from 2021 to 2027. So the market share will be increased from 0.7 billion to the 1.31 billion. So according to that, this is the CAGR of 9.3%. And if we talk about the regional analysis in 2021 and the technique segment overseas about the between the North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa, and the South America. Due to the growing demand of vitamin D testing, the laboratories are also needing their high throughput and accurate results. So the vitamin D chemiluminescence assay are perfectly meet these needs, and the few parameters like accuracy through the participation of RICAS, ECAS, CAP, and DCAS also play a very important role to prove the accuracy of the assay performance. And if they have any comparison stays steady with LCMS, and the clinical correlation will help them to boost the assay performance and the assay reliability in the market. So what is the solution that the SNIBE has from the Meglumi platform? This is important for the large lab. We have a Meglumi 4000 plus, Meglumi X8. We have a Meglumi X6. And for the medial-sized lab or a medium-sized lab, we have a Meglumi 2000, Meglumi 2000 plus. And for the small-sized lab, we have a Meglumi 800, 600, and Meglumi X3. So these are all about the systems, and then the solution from a small lab to the large size labs. So this is about the SNI Meglumi vitamin D and the features that and the edges that we have as compared to the other competitors. So if you have any question, you can ask for the vitamin D. Otherwise, we have to take a 15 minutes break, and then we will be back for the next slide of P1NP total and osteocalcin. So any question, or we have to go for a break? Okay, so we have to take a break. So we can start the break. Okay. We will be back after 15 minutes, right? Yes.